All right, welcome in, everyone. We're going deep with David Goggins today. His book, Can't Hurt Me. For anyone who's heard of Goggins, you already know this is not your typical self-help story.
Definitely not. No, we're digging into the specifics,
Mhm.
how he actually conquers these crazy challenges most of us wouldn't even think of.
Exactly. And like the why behind it all, like what makes a person run ultra marathons on broken bones or, lose over 100 pounds in 3 months just to try out for the Navy SEALs, which is insane, by the way.
Yeah, that intensity is like a core part of his whole philosophy, right?
hmm
Goggins believes we only use like 40% of our potential, so there's all this strength and resilience we're just leaving untapped.
Okay, so how do we unlock that? Well, Goggins is really open about his tough childhood. I think that's where this whole can't hurt me thing started.
Yeah, escaping his abusive father at 6 years old, uh, fleeing in the middle of the night, hiding out in a Holiday Inn, you know, counting pennies to survive. That's some serious early trauma.
Yeah. He talks about feeling like damaged goods, but that somehow became his fuel later on. Like he was proving something to himself and to the world that tried to break him.
That's a huge point. He doesn't just survive suffering, he uses it, you know?
hmm
Turns that pain into motivation, into a test for his mental toughness.
Which brings us to one of his most famous tools, the accountability. Mirror, now we all need a little self-reflection, but Goggins takes it to a whole other level.
Picture this, a mirror covered in post. It just notes each one like a brutal assessment of your weaknesses, not just need to lose weight, but lazy or undisciplined, the kind of stuff that makes you cringe.
Yeah, he used it to face his flaws head on, no sugarcoating. But how can anyone actually use this without feeling totally crushed?
It's about being honest, not putting yourself down. You pick one area you want to improve, write the brutal truth about what's holding you back, then you add the steps you'll take to change.
So it's a mirror showing you where you are and the way forward. I like that now this tough love seems central to Goggins' transformation from, like you said, overweight civilian to Navy SEAL.
Seeing that SEAL documentary was his turning point, but he was almost 300 pounds. So dropping 106 pounds in 3 months just to qualify, that's where you see his insane discipline.
2-a-day workouts, running until he was sick, teaching himself to swim from a Swimming for Dummies book because he was terrified of water.
And all while working a full-time job. This wasn't some guy with tons of free time. It was pure willpower.
That's got to be a huge takeaway for listeners. Talent is great, but Goggins shows that dedication can overcome almost anything.
And then there's Hell Week. SEAL training is already notorious, but we're talking 130 hours, no sleep, freezing cold, constant physical stress. It's designed to break you.
Goggins doesn't just say he finished it, he talks about coughing up brown mucus afterwards, just to give you an idea of what he went through.
That's where he really builds what he calls the calloused mind, not just pushing through once, but doing it again and again to build that resilience.
Like calluses on your hands from hard work, but this is your mind getting tougher. So how does this apply to, normal life?
Think of it this way. Every time you avoid something tough, your mind gets weaker. Every time you push through even something small, you're building that mental callus.
So it all adds up over time, interesting. And Goggins didn't stop at Hell Week. He broke bones during training, had setbacks, but always kept going.
There's a pattern here. He doesn't enjoy suffering. He sees it as the cost of leveling up. He chooses discomfort over being comfortable.
Which is definitely not what you hear from most self-help people.
Nope. And this mindset leads him to ultra marathons.
Which, let's be real, is pretty crazy. He runs his first 100-mile race on a whim, barely trained, fueled by Myoplex and Ritz crackers. I mean, come on.
But it goes back to his 40% rule. He thought he had all this untapped energy that most people never use. This wasn't him being reckless. It was him testing that theory in the most extreme way possible.
Yeah.
And it's during that first 100-miler that we see another one of his tactics, the what he calls the cookie jar.
Yeah, that one's a little more relatable than brown mucus. So he hits mile 70. His body's falling apart. He wants to quit.
Most people would, right. But he starts picturing this cookie jar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's full of memories of times he succeeded, big and small.
Moments where he beat the odds, pushed past what he thought he could do. He uses that to keep going through that rough patch.
Right. It's not about getting stuck in the past, but remembering that you have overcome challenges before, and that builds mental toughness.
So you're basically filling your own cookie jar with every hard workout, every project. You finish anything where you had to dig deep.
Exactly. You're proving to yourself that you have that grit, and when you hit a wall, you can tap into it.
This is gold for anyone listening who's struggling with a big goal. It's like proof that you're tougher than you think.
Goggins would agree with that. And it ties into his whole idea of iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
He's not just pushing himself, he's pushing everyone around him.
This is where he gets a little controversial, right?
Yeah.
That hardcore, no excuses style isn't for everyone.
He's definitely not about being soft or giving out trophies. He sees potential in people that they don't even see in themselves, and he's relentless about bringing it out.
Some might call it tough love, others might say it's just harsh, but there are tons of stories about people whose lives were changed because of Goggins.
Like Sean Dobbs, this former SEAL candidate, he says Goggins helped him overcome self-doubt and achieve what he thought was impossible.
And Sledge, another SEAL Goggins mentored, pushing him to be his best in crazy tough situations.
His whole thing is about creating an environment where you grow, where weakness is challenged, and you reach your full potential.
Now, we can't talk about Goggins without mentioning some of his more extreme stuff. Bad Water, that 135-mile ultra through Death Valley, that's just the beginning.
And then there's the Ultraman World Championships in Hawaii, a 3-day, 320-mile race with swimming, biking, and running.
Wait, he did all three? That's not even possible.
He not only did all three, but get this, during the 170-mile bike ride, he crashed and broke his collarbone.
No way he kept going with a broken collarbone.
He got back on the bike, finished the ride, and then the next day ran a double marathon, 52.4 miles, with a broken collarbone.
Okay, that's some next-level willpower. I mean, what can we even learn from that? Most of us aren't running double marathons with broken bones.
True, but it shows you a crucial part of his mindset. He absolutely refuses to let pain control what he does.
It's like he's rewiring his brain to see discomfort as a sign to push harder.
And that's where the real value is for the average person, not in copying his crazy feats, but in adopting that way of thinking.
So the next time you want to hit snooze or skip a workout, ask yourself, what would Goggins do?
Exactly. It's about challenging those moments of weakness. Those times your mind says, give up. That's where you grow.
Okay, so we've covered the extreme challenges, the cookie jar, the calloused mind. But what does this all mean for someone listening who isn't trying to be a SEAL?
Goggins would say his message is for everyone. We all have untapped potential fears that hold us back, goals we're putting off.
He's basically saying stop making excuses and take control of your life, which of course is easier said than done.
But he gives us the tools, the accountability, mirror the cookie jar, the 40% rule. These are things we can use in our own lives.
It's like he's saying, here's the blueprint. Now go build your own badass version of yourself.
And that's what connects with people.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming Goggins. It's about finding out what you're capable of when you push past your limits.
That's a powerful takeaway. But before we move on, I'm curious, what's resonating with you from this part of his story? What stands out?
For me, it's the sheer audacity of the challenges he takes on. The Ultraman running 100 miles on a whim. It's almost crazy, but it shows you something amazing about human potential. We often underestimate what we can handle, what we can achieve when we set our minds to it.
Yeah, it's like he's redefining what's humanly possible. And, it's interesting. This whole journey takes a turn when Goggins gets diagnosed with a serious heart defect.
You'd think that'd be the moment he finally slows down, right? After Hell Week, Badwater, the Ultraman, but no.
This is Goggins we're talking about. He sees it as another challenge to overcome.
He has surgery but still has complications. And it's during this recovery that we see a shift in his approach.
This is where he starts exploring stretching, right? Totally different from that hardcore training he's known for.
Yeah, it shows how willing he is to adapt and evolve. He spends hours stretching, even though it's super painful at first.
He's realizing that real resilience isn't just about muscle and grit. It's about listening to your body, finding balance.
And he sees amazing results. Better flexibility, less chronic pain, faster recovery from injuries.
This is a big takeaway for anyone listening who might be ignoring flexibility. We tend to focus on pushing harder, but sometimes the answer is to slow down and work smarter.
Goggins wouldn't have achieved all he did without that drive, but even he had to learn to adapt and refine his methods.
It's a reminder that growth is a process. You don't reach a certain level and stop.
Exactly. And that brings us to another key part of Goggins' philosophy, his impact on others. He's not just about personal achievement. He's about empowering those around him.
We see it when he mentors other SEAL candidates, pushing them to go beyond what they thought they could do, and later as a motivational speaker, inspiring tons of people around the world.
He's known for the intense, in-your-face style, but you can't deny the power of his message.
People overcoming addiction, achieving athletic goals, breaking free from self-limiting beliefs. It's like he's lighting a fire in them, helping them find their own inner Goggins.
It's more than just motivation. It's about showing people what they can do when they break through those limits they've put on themselves.
So we've covered a lot here, the childhood trauma, the accountability, mirror the cookie jar, the calloused mind, all the way to pushing past a heart defect and inspiring others to do the same.
What's the one thing you want listeners to take away from this deep dive?
Goggins shows us that we're capable of so much more than we think. His story is proof of what the human will can do, the ability to overcome obstacles that seem impossible.
He's a living example of the 40% rule. He's pushing past that self-imposed limit and showing us all what we can do when we do the same.
He doesn't try to make it sound easy. He's honest about the pain, the discipline, the setbacks, but he shows us that it's worth it. So to wrap things up, let's leave our listeners with a challenge. What's one area of your life where you're settling for 40%? What's one fear holding you back? What's one goal you've been putting off?
Take a page from Goggins' book, Face That Fear, Challenge That Limit. Take action towards that goal. You might surprise yourself with what you can achieve.
And if you need inspiration, definitely check out Can't Hurt Me. It's a powerful book that will challenge your assumptions and ignite your potential love. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep pushing those boundaries.